Playing D&D with ChatGPT, Claude, AIs is really fun. And now with things like Model Context Protocol, you can start doing like agentic AI D&D. So in part 3 of me building out these agentic tools using Model Context Protocol in Java using Spring AI, the official SDK for Model Context Protocol for Java, what I'm going to do is go through building what I call a DM journal, Dungeon Master Journal. So listen, this gets pretty long, but I think there's some interesting insights to get from going through this and kind of all of the examples where you not only get a sense of like how to do MCP stuff, but you start to see the changing nature of how you kind of do programming, how you shift from like code to more of a natural language way of interacting with APIs and other components. I don't know. So stick in there, I guess. And as the AI is going along DMing for you, while you're being a solo player character playing with it, you know, it remembers what's in the context window that the AI thing has, but its memory is pretty short. Now this is getting better, you know, however many tokens or words. But even if you want to switch between different chat sessions, or as I often do, going from Claude to ChatGPT to ChatGPT to Claude and back, its memory is not that great. So I started using something I call a DM journal, where every now and then it writes out things that are going on. And then when it starts up, it can read through that adventure. And in MCP, there's two things that you end up using here, I think, that fit with how a Model Context Protocol wants you to think. You have a tool that writes to the journal, and you create a resource that is the way you read the journal in. So let's look at both of those and kind of see the evolution of how you do it using Spring AI and the Model Context Protocol stuff in there. So you can do it all in Java. So first, I think in this case, it's useful to think about the goal you want to get to. What do you want this journal to look like? And so what I'm going to show you is the journal that we're going to end up generating, what it looks like. And this is, of course, the chat DM directory. If you remember from parts 1 and 2, we create a little dot directory that all these different files are stored in that are managed. And there's one here you can see called journal. Now, I end up generating two files. One, a JSON one that's kind of a more programmatic one. I don't know why, but eventually when I get to adding in implementations for cursors for paginating through it so you don't have to read the whole journal at once, maybe that will become useful. And then I create a human readable one, you know, because it can be fun to look at it, even though it may reveal spoilers. But here we are. I've opened it up and marked here. Now there's not much going on here because I restarted this recently, but you can see that it says what it is. This is in Markdown, of course, you know, if you want to see the actual, if you're into actual Markdown, you know, you can see it there. But let me open it in Mark so we can just see it rendered. Why not? But you can see that it's dating each entry, and then there's kind of a description of what's happening, something that a dungeon master might note down. Now, eventually, I was talking about wanting to do pagination for this, which might actually be okay, but it's going to be kind of an issue. So maybe in subsequent things, we'll implement a way of just getting like the last 5 entries, which you can do in MCP with the cursor thing. So here's the end goal. We're going to have this, and there's going to be multiple entries. So how do you end up generating this? Let's say I'm going to go through how this session was generated, so you can, you know, start with what it's going to look like. Then we'll get into the code, and you can see here I am in Claude, and you know, I'm going to do another video where I go over creating a prompt, not like this, more complicated, but we're starting it off, and I've decided on this character Sven, which is a gnome. I always thought it'd be fun to play a gnome, and fighters are good because they kind of can fit into any situation. You know, they're tough, and I've made him chaotic neutral so that he can just be crazy, right? Unpredictable and weird, you know, and just kind of, that seems like a nice thing for solo role playing. So I've told it that it started to play, and it has this journal tool that we'll see. And so the first thing it does, which is great, we'll see why it does this, is it tries to read it. And you remember I put in these context things just to get into the mind of the DM. So you can see, but I deleted it. It was a blank journal. So it's starting the game brand new. And it's setting up the first entry. And here, as it says, it's establishing the game. So here, it has no journal entry. And now that I'm going over this, what's interesting is it's using this chance of a journal entry to invent the adventure, to make up something new, what we just saw in there. And there's some thinking we can go over about how you prompt it. So it's made that journal entry we looked at, and now it's kicking off the adventure at the Soggy Boot Tavern. Great name. That's what we're going to end up seeing. Let's look at some of the kind of the spec, if you will, to figure out what we should be doing. Now, most, you know, whether it's 90%, 80%. Most of what you see with Model Context Protocol servers are tools because they're very easy to make. They're straightforward. They do stuff. And it's just sort of what you would expect. You want to add methods that your AI can call. When you look at what it says about tools, a tool is basically something that you want the AI to autonomously use, determine how to use it on its own, that I generally think about it as it's supposed to do something. It's not just reading in information, but it's actually requiring something to be done, right? It exposes executable functionality to the client. That's a fantastic phrase. If you think about it, tools pretty much will do everything you want to do in MCP. There's a few things that maybe they wouldn't, but you could direct the AI to use the tools, input and output, however you kind of wanted. It's also the most widely best implemented feature. It works very well in Claude versus, as we'll see, resources, let alone prompts. I don't think sampling even works in Claude. So in the case of a DM journal, think about a tool as what you would use to write a DM journal, to add an entry, because you're modifying what's happening, and you also want the AI to autonomously think about doing it. But if we look over at what a resource is, semantically, what the spec wants you to do, if you're doing something like reading a Dungeon Master journal, a text file, or JSON bundle of stuff, is it wants you to make it a resource. That's because what a resource is doing is it exposes data and content to be read by clients. Claude's implementation of resources is super clunky and annoying. It basically has to be user initiated, I think, every time you do it. That's another reason why it's nicer to use it as a tool, because in the Claude desktop app, once you give access to a tool, you don't have to give access to it again. Okay, so we've got a DM journal. What we're going to do is, and really, it's just a bunch of markdown entries, text that are wrapped into a JSON file with that human readable markdown thing generated beside it. So really all we're doing here is writing to a text file and reading from a text file, right? So you can see how you can extend that to whatever you want. Now, the other thing to extend your thinking to here is if you hook this up to a database or whatever a GraphQL is. I don't know all this newfangled stuff the kids use, but whatever a source of data might be, you can think of that as a resource. IDEs are the most popular thing, it seems like, to do MCP stuff. And you can think of a lot of what's in an IDE or code base as a resource that you're reading things from. If you remember parts 1 and 2, which I'm sure you've watched multiple times, shared it with your kids and everyone. This is all in the Easy Chat DM project, obviously over there in GitHub. It's a Spring Boot application that uses Spring AI, which has Model Context Protocol support, which uses that official implementation for MCP, the MCP JDK. Let's get into the project here. So the first thing that I said is we're going to implement an MCP tool. Now in part 1 and 2, I went over making tools, simple ones, and then more complex ones that read up files. You may remember those, but we're going to specify a journal tool. Let's look at the read one first, right? So I've got a whole, all of the complexity of writing files is often a DM repository, and I would show it to you, but really, it just is some stuff to write out files. Not a big deal. The only thing that's interesting, I guess, is that whenever it writes the DM journal out, it also writes that markdown thing. And because I'm doing this in a file-based way, it just recreates the entire journal every time. I don't really have it appending and doing things fancy like that. This is where having a database, whether it was a bundled one or one that you could be running in a Tanzu platform or a Cloud Foundry or a cloud thing, would be very beneficial instead of doing files, but files are easy. The key part of doing this is that, when you define a tool, you use this annotation in Spring Boot to say the name of the tool, and I like to append this here just to kind of make it easy to search in logs. And then you pass in a description of what the tool does, which we'll get into. And then you just make whatever kind of method you want that returns an object. And what's nice is I've made this journal object, and what the Spring AI MCP thing will do is you can pass back this object, and as long as it can be converted to JSON, it's a simple enough structure, it'll just do that for you. And you don't really have to worry about it very much. So we'll look at that journal just very briefly. All the journal has, let's look at the structure of it so you can see. It's just you have a journal with a name, which I don't really use at the moment, but I'm thinking of if players have journals or NPCs have journals, we'll give it a different name so that they can track separate things. And then it just has entries, and It's exactly what you would think. It's just a record that has a date, the real world date, the author, like it's the DM writing it. Again, I'm thinking a little too far ahead of time, a summary, which I don't really end up using, and then a content. Just as a refresher, right? We just saw the journal thing. You can see here's the title of it. There's a date entry that the journal has, and then the actual entry, the text that was in there. If we had multiple ones, you would see multiple entries. How does Claude know to call it? So this is the part that I think is most interesting and important about making a tool. Because most of these tools, you're just, like I was showing you, you're linking up to something that's pretty simple. But here is like one of the things I've been thinking about recently when you're doing agentic AI or MCP stuff is a lot of the work is in this natural text stuff, right? In this entry here and then here. And this is maybe subtle and obvious, but usually if you're programming something, you don't really think about the documentation, right? Because you're writing it in, a more programming type of way, right? Like if we look over here at something that's reading files, right? Like this is like very direct, deterministic, as some people would say. This is programming. You're not natural language programming. But when we go back here, most of the work is being done by this prompt, right? And this is the API, more or less, that you have to Claude. So this is where the interesting work happens. So when you're using Spring AI's MCP stuff and you make a tool, you use these annotations to do it. This is a prompt. I actually used ChatGPT, the newly released o3 model, to help me reason through this prompt. I used to have a much briefer one, but I wanted to give it more information to go through, right? So, you work on this prompt, you write it, and then you just dump it in here as the description. And then this is what Claude will see and sort of think about how to use this tool and what to do with it, right? So I'm trying to tell it what's in the journal, the format that it uses. As always, I have a parameter about the context that I want it to pass in, just to kind of spy on it and see what's happening. And then really that's it, right? Like you compile it, you restart your Claude guy, and then as we saw, if we go over to Claude, when it starts up, it tries to read the journal and see what's happening. So let's actually test that out. Let's say let's play D&D. I'm playing Sven. And then let's see, I'm always curious if it's going to be smart enough to read the journal. It should know we're playing D&D. I've got a DM journal at my disposal. I'm going to read it, but maybe not. So I'll say, we've already been playing. Can you check your notes? We'll see if it translates notes to a DM journal. Nope. Sometimes Claude just, misses what's going on here. Like I've said, this is probably a point of like commercial differentiation. So you would differentiate not only the model, but the application you've built around it is like a human would look at the tools that it had available, especially notes, and be like, oh, look, I've got this thing called a DM journal. That's like notes. Let's see. I'll be a lot more direct. Look at the MCP tools you have and load up the DM journal. And as a side note, see what I'm doing here is prompting it. So this is an instance where maybe a prompt would be useful. So you can imagine, there you go, it's finally figured it out, that what I would do is I would make a prompt that was like, let's start playing D&D, which would have all of that stuff. It would say to read the journal and give more instructions. And that actually kind of makes sense as a prompt that a user would initiate. Just the way Claude does it is very clunky. So you can see that it went out. It read that. I need to recall details. I love this little context stuff. It's fun to see what it's saying. And you can see it returned that big old entry. One thing that's nice about solo role-playing with this stuff is it, unless you want to peek, it hides all of that stuff for you. Whereas normally if you're doing this manually, you're the meat sack agentic AI, you're cutting and pasting this stuff around and you end up seeing it. But here, it can keep all of its reasoning and its knowledge hidden from you. So here we are. Does it know that he's in the Soggy Boot Tavern? Excellent. So let's generate some entries, okay? He's in the smell of peat smoke. Let's see. Your battle axe leans up. Let's see. Let's get that battle axe and go look for a notices board in this town. I'm interested, not only making money, but having some fun. Maybe there's a troll that needs a stern talking to. Here you can see it using one of the other tools, right? Does it have a notice board? Ooh, I hope, no, it doesn't. One thing that I need to figure out tuning is getting it to not use tools so much. But look, even though there's not a notice board, it's figured out that someone is looking for work. Yeah, a scarred woman, several laden mules. I approach her and ask her if she needs help. It's probably going to call its deterministic tools or the motivations. That's fun. See, look. So that's where these logs are kind of interesting to watch. You can see it's actually doing a very agentic thing, and it's chaining together a lot of different calls, right? It's building up what the adventure is, and this is pretty exciting, right? It's calling another oracle to ask a question. Let's just, while we're waiting on it, so it's wondering what her motivations are, right? And then why does it call motivations again? I need to determine her current motivation. Maybe she's got some other ones. And then let's see, it's probably going to ask like, what does she look like? So this is kind of fascinating, right? It built up all of this stuff. So you remember in last episode, I went over how to enable logging, right? And now you can see why logging is interesting and why putting this context is interesting. Here, you can see where did it start doing it. So does it have a notice board, right? They're common to many settlements, but this, so that's interesting, right? And then here, you can see it's starting to build up Lyra Thornblade's motivations. You can see what we replied with is seeking the ultimate truth behind existence. That's some heavy shit that she's pondering there. And then you can see it it's building up more stuff. The previous result was unusually philosophic for a mercenary captain. Oh, see, there's some reasoning for you. They talk about agentic stuff as all reasoning. It's just like I said, some heavy shit. It was like, whoa, she's just a mercenary captain. Let's chill out with the philosophy stuff. And what it returned is that driven by the need to repay a debt that grows larger each year. Simple. Right? So now it wanted to figure out what she looks like, and on and on and on. You can pause the video if you want to look at it. Tracing through, seeing what agentic AI actually is in practice beyond just finding out what the weather is. And these typical examples I show you is pretty interesting. This is, again, an instance where if I had a prompt, I would do this, but I've found that you can also say, I'm going to take a break. Make sure to note down the state of the adventure so you remember. This usually triggers it to call that tool. And again, this is where I would want a prompt, and especially if you had the completion where you could do something like, DM, let's see, do that, you could type in write journal. And that kind of stuff is in the MCP spec, but I don't know if it's really implemented that well. It'd be fun to do. So you can see it's written that journal entry out. And just for fun, let's look at the journal entry. I mean, I guess for fun, but just to kind of see. So here we go. You can see that it used that prompt to write the journal entry out, right? And remember that prompt was long, but you can see that it's adding in a lot of details, right? It's saying kind of what happened there, the MCP highlights, which is fun. It even picked up on this, and then blah blah blah, etc. You can read that. And this is one part I wanted to add at the end, because it often loses track of the adventure that it's on. Like if you think about an adventure has a lot of potential, a lot of branching things. And I wanted it to kind of, obviously it's making this up each time that it does it, because that's how LLMs work, based on what's said previously. But I wanted to kind of note down and remember what its intentions were, metaphorically speaking, for the adventure. So you saw the loop for reading a journal and what it looks like writing. I'll show you the tool for writing the journal entry. What's interesting about the tool is not really the code, but is the instructions on how to use it. If we look at the actual tool, the actual code, it does even less than what the other one was. Now, anytime someone says in code that it's just one line of code, what they mean is you have just one line of code to call 50,000 lines of code, right? It's always more than one line of code. But in this case, really just adding a journal entry, right? We go to our GM journal repository, it's just file stuff. So it's not a big deal. Let's spend a little bit of time looking at this, right? So, it tells that it's a tool, which it will know semantically, but you want to define it here's what this tool is, right? Because you remember, maybe you don't remember, but you can kind of get a simulation for what this looks like if you go into, you remember that Claude has all the stuff here, but this is kind of like the view that Claude has of the tool, right? So it knows there's one called easy, add DM journal entry, and then here's that description. It's just a human readable, kind of human readable, but I'm assuming Claude looks at this description and looks at all the descriptions and just kind of holds them in its mind. I don't know if that makes the context window screw up or how it works. I would hope it uses a secondary AI to whenever it comes time to, when I say, would you update an entry, it takes that text and goes to the secondary AI that knows about tools and says, you got any tools for me? But that's implementation details for the MCP client to figure out. That way you could manage your context windows separately. So you can see it's telling it what to do. It's using the description to instruct it how it should be used, which I assume is what you need to do. And again, we're doing very natural language sort of stuff here, right? Doing, very standard prompt engineering. Where we have examples, we're giving it a structure to follow and leaving up a lot to interpretation, the sections that you might have. And this is that branching path thing. And then also there's this part, which I added in, which is, when should you do this? As you saw, it doesn't exactly know when to do it, but that's something that you would want a lot of tuning because you don't want it updating the journal every single turn that you have. And then, and I use ChatGPT's with the new O3 thing to come up with this and massage it. But then I provide a lot of examples of what I want, even like simple examples. This is very long examples. These are very detailed long examples, but then there's just like simple little ones when something like that happens. And that's it, so to speak, right? Like you can see that storing these prompts in their own file somewhere would be a lot nicer than putting them in the code here. But like I was saying, if you look at what a resource is, it's a way to expose data and content that might be used by them. Is really data and content. So having it be a tool is not exactly what you would want. Again, it's fine. It's the easiest thing to do, and because Claude is clunky in how it does resources, it's actually handy to have a good time. So instead, let's make a resource. And we can look at, if you find it handy to actually look at the spec for what a resource is. I don't quite understand JSON schema stuff yet. It seems like a lot of double quotes that people have gotten themselves involved in. I don't know if they woke up probably in 2012 and they were like, you know what I want to do? I want to make expressing schemas better by having to use a lot of double quotes. I don't think anyone planned for that, but now here we are. Double quotes, even around variable names. You never quote a variable name. I don't know if what you do in like Ada or COBOL, but like quoting a variable name is ridiculous. That's the whole point of a variable name, is it's like not quoted. It's part of the code. A quote is for something that is not code.
There's not even comments. What kind of ridiculous thing do you do where you don't have comments, especially for something like a spec? Even CSS has comments.
But here we are in our lovely JSON world where we all shall live. So this is the kind of resource that we're going to do, just a simple read resource. There's all sorts of methods for listing resources that you have and stuff like that, but we won't worry about that for now. That'll be for another time. But really all you're getting is, when you send the request over, you're asking for a URI of what it is, which as you'll see, you can just make up. Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, look, that's you're looking at it right now. It's in like something called TypeScript, which doesn't have quotes.
What? I mean, wait, what are you saying?
Yeah, go look at the thing.
Oh, defined and I see.
They actually just output like this JSON thing for, I guess, people who like lots of double quotes. That's it.
Well, whatever. Whether it's a schema or just this JSON interchange.
You're making yourself look like an old fart idiot who used to like do J2EE, doesn't know the 2 was dropped.
I mean, come on. I understand, maybe it made sense at the time, but like it's JavaScript, whatever, but really, it makes me feel bad.
Remember you were so happy when you made an EGB once and all it did is like look up some field in a database? Like, what was that all about?
So you send a request over for this URI, and the response you're going to get back, there's lists and templates, but we'll skip over that stuff for now. The response you're going to get back is what the URI was, the MIME type, and the text or a binary thing, right? And we're just going to send back text. Currently, as of April 17th, 2025. Spring AI, the MCP stuff, doesn't have annotations for resources, which is fine. This might be one of the areas where a resource would be kind of the handiest. And so you've got to manually do this. And this gets you into some of the actually looking at the MCP JDK stuff, which is interesting to spelunk through for someone who hasn't coded since 2005. So whenever you start doing something new with the MCP JDK or Spring, what I find useful is to go look at the docs. And so here's the basic docs. And I always just search for Spring AI SDK to bring this up. But let's look at what it says about resources, right? Because since it doesn't have fancy annotations, we're going to have to learn how to make a resource. So here you can see that it's a lot different, right, than making a tool So you can see what you're going to be doing is you have this resource, and we're going to build up a specification, and then throw in some whatever lambda is. We got that all in there. So let's start with my code at least to see what we're doing, and then I'll show you why using the source code is like really important. So here's the resource, right? What's in these mysterious 3 dots, you might ask? Well, this is why having the code is really important. So in IntelliJ you can just like load all this stuff up. But let's just go click on it and see what a resource is, right? And here, you got docs. So this is the first thing that you're going to want to build up, what's inside those 3 dots. You can see what you're passing in is the URI, the name, a description of it, the MIME type, and annotations. We'll get to the annotations. If we go back to our tool, you can see we pass in the URI, and then here's the name of it, and then this is the description. And I don't know if this is what you're supposed to use a description for with the resource. It's a little more mechanical. I think if you were using something like an initial prompt to set the system, you would put these definitions of what the tools are in the prompt, and it would figure that out. But I don't know. I'm just, I'm figuring that the life cycle is you load a resource, as we'll see, and it reads the description, and it kind of remembers that of how to do it. I'm telling it that here is the format of what is in the resource, right? So, you can read it at your leisure, but it is kind of the opposite thing of writing a resource out. And then, of course, the way I have this written is it returns a JSON object. So I like to look at the markdown because I don't read JSON. I flunked out of that class. But you can see that it just takes the markdown entries and puts them into a JSON file and returns that. I don't know if that's better than just returning the markdown, but I do it. And then you have this annotations thing. What is the annotations thing, you may ask? Well, that's why it's good to have the code. Oh, and then here we go. Annotations. Used to, I forget if this is specified in the protocol thing, but here we basically kind of lose track of what an annotation is, but you can see it here. And there's a constant to say it's for an assistant, which is the AI. So all we really do is we go back here, and this isn't for the player. It's only for the AI to use, so I say assistant. And then in MCP, you can specify a priority. For some reason, they're super smart and nerdy, and they just, you do it from 0.0 to 1.0. Why you wouldn't just have a number? I don't know. Do you really need to worry about basis points and micro basis points and things like that? It's cool. It's fine. I don't really know what this means, and I don't think it's actually specified anywhere. So whenever a priority is not semantically described, everything is top priority. Number 1, very important. And it kind of arguably is the top priority because this is kind of the state of the game that you want the DM to follow. So if they deviated from this, it would break the world. So it's a high priority item. So there you go. That's the first thing that you do, is we're specifying a description of what it is, and then we'll use that later. So then we have a specification, as you remember from the docs here. Now we're going to build up a sync resource specification. Now there's a sync and an asynchronous server in MCP JDK. The trick is the synchronous server actually just bundles and hides the asynchronous server. But everyone uses the synchronous server nowadays, or a lot of people. I do, because it's all done synchronously with the standard in out stuff for the Claude desktop. You can copy this code over, and it actually is, the way they have it done here is a lot easier to understand what's happening. So let me go over that since it is easier, and then we'll look at my code, which maybe is not easier. But you can see what's happening is we've specified what this resource is, right? So think of this specification. Again, you don't see this when you're doing tools, but when you look at the rest of the MCP JDK, a lot of what you're doing is every time you make a resource, a prompt template, you're building that, you make a specification of what it looks like. And then confusingly, I don't really like this thing that I guess you do in modern Java where you specify something and then you actually have the code that runs to satisfy it. Again, you kids in the way you do stuff. I get that it's compact and it's nice, but I feel like the description of something should be separate than the actual execution of it. But whatever, this also is pretty nice and compact. So what you got going over here is you're specifying something, and also the specification says whenever you get called here, do the actual running. So you pass in the resource, and this is what's in the new version. This is an interesting little object that maybe we'll look at, the exchange. This is a little handle on what's actually going on in the flow, and the request is that actual request for a URI, right? And here we go, more 3-dot magic. And then you can see what's happening here is it's loading up is it system info? I guess what it's, yeah, here it's doing a report on like, what kind of computer you have, I guess. So it loads that up and then it just basically sticks it into JSON and then makes text content of it. It wraps up in that reply and then that's what it's going to reply with. And then it returns that specification back. So this resource gets defined such that when you are in Claude, let me show you what this will end up looking like, and then we'll go back to my code. And this is where Claude is super clunky about it, and it's quite disappointing. So the resources are hidden under here. And if you look at it, the way this is going to present to you in the UI in Claude is right here. We've got the DM chat journal, right? So we go all the way back to our code, right? My code. And you can see DM chat journal, right? And we've defined this resource and it has that here. Let's give an example of loading it up. You can see what it does is it's just sucked that resource in as a text file. If we look at it, you can see the result of what it has. And you probably will remember these from in there. Great stuff. Now let's get into my code, right? The way I separate this out. So this resource, unlike our nice, clean, compact illustrative example code, the description that I made for the resource, very long, which is again, hidden here in these 3 dots. So I made it as a whole separate thing rather than bundling it all together. And then here is where I make that specification. Remember when you're making a resource, and I think a prompt as well, you're specifying what it looks like. And if you were not using the Spring AI stuff to make a tool, you would make a specification too. Here's that resource I defined, right, up here. And then we do the magic Lambda stuff, which, I'll stop complaining about it. I get it, right? Makes sense. And, I love incessantly logging. And with just one line of code, we can read the journal, right? Along with all the lines of code after that. This is the same thing that we saw in the tool. I think I'm reading it as a JSON, which I don't know if I need to do it, if it'll convert it to JSON for me. That would be an interesting experiment. So we get the journal code, and if there's some error, we log it. I'll skip over this for now. There's a fun thing for the reader to check out, to see, think about what's going on there. And then, so this is the payload, the contents of what you're going to return. So you make this text resource contents. As always, this is why it's fun. It's good to have the source code open. Let's go look at it. Another record, which I think after seeing how records are used here, it's an interesting secondary use of records rather than just holders of data. Kind of a way to enforce what something looks like. But you can see it just takes the URI that you had, always with the URI, the MIME type, and just the text chunk. There's also the blob thing if you're returning an image. I haven't done that yet, so I'm not going to show it. We package it up, and then we make that resource stick it in the list of stuff. And you can see looking at this, right? Like why having Spring annotations around this to handle a bunch of this. So what I want to do with this is let's turn off the tool and see what happens when we kind of force it to use this. I am just going to comment out reading the journal entry this way just to see what happens. All right, so let's redo this. Let's see. Let's play some D&D. Do you have a journal you can catch up with? Like a DM? I'm going to be very direct here as an MCP resource, because this will be interesting to see if it knows about the resource before I've attached it, because it actually does know about it because it's showing me in the UI, but maybe the model doesn't know about it for security. I shouldn't be dismissive or whatever. I'm guessing it's not going to know it has that resource at all, and we're going to have to manually give it. So see, that was weird. It doesn't know about the resource, but it knows about the tool. This goes on for a long time. Let me tell you what happens. It doesn't know about the resource, and you have to manually load it each time, even if you've already loaded it. And in fact, what it does is it makes up that it's read the journal, which is fascinating. It hallucinates about that and just inserts something that didn't ever actually happen, which is cool, but not really what you want to happen. That's something to reflect on when you're making these tools, thinking about actually testing out if it's doing what you think it is, which is a whole other interesting realm of things to worry about, right? Like if you're doing like a real system, like booking airplane seats or determining which ways planes should fly or things like that, which probably shouldn't do with this, or just mundane things like figuring out restocking pickles at a grocery store. You know, if you had American style pickles at my neighborhood grocery store, we would buy all of them every week instead of the sweet pickles that they like here in Europe. Real American dill pickles would be delicious. They'd have to keep reordering those all the time. But you would want some way of verifying that the conclusions you'd agentically made through actually were using your sources, right? An audit log that when I told it to read the DM stuff, it actually read the DM stuff instead of making it up. So, you know, there you go. you can get an idea of what it looks like to make a DM journal, right? A log of things that are happening. And again, I think what's important is, this is just fun playing D&D, right? But you've got this distinction between you use a tool when you want the AI to autonomously, on its own, I would say do something. Like we wrote out to the entry. You could use it to retrieve things and look things up, searching something. That's also something you could use it for. Whereas a resource is maybe like a static. It actually could change each time you call it, but it's more like a document or a piece of data or something that you're calling. You could also think of it as the source code you have in your IDE, and maybe the value of tables that you have when it comes to those tables, right? We didn't go over what a resource template is, but what a template is, oh my God, don't bring up a whole other thing. You've got to wrap this up. I'm getting hungry. All that code will be checked in here. It might evolve as I change it if I make more videos, but you can check that out and get that code there. Next episode, I think what I'll go over is maybe I'll take a little break and go over some of the lessons I've learned. Yeah, like don't record 90 minutes talking about Dungeons and Dragons journals. See you next time.